As you enter the exhibition, the first images along the east wall are the portraits of our two photographers. The first is of Seneca Ray Stoddard as a mature man with a beard and a knapsack under his arm. Next, you'll see Jesse Sumner Wooley, some 20 years younger, in a studio setting. A reasonable question might be, why pair these two photographers together, and what did they have in common? In this exhibition, we will visit points of similarity and differences. We explore their growth and development in life and in photography, and how one influenced the other when photography was in its infancy. Both men were born in Wilton, New York, a rural and agricultural town founded in the early 1800s. It is well documented that Stoddard and Wooley traveled together, photographing the region. Here it is worth noting that there are differences in the framing of the images. The smaller brown frames hold Stoddard's original first generation. The larger black-framed images are Wooley's original postcards. The postcards were recently scanned into high-resolution files and enlarged for this exhibit. Next, we see Seneca Ray Stoddard through varying stages of his life, as an artist, a naturalist, and as a businessman in his office. Stoddard was the elder of the two and, in practice, was Wooley's mentor. Here we see something very special in this exhibition, Stoddard's original paintings. These are lesser-known paintings that have not been displayed in years. They demonstrate his skill as a genuine artist. Alongside his paintings are a few of his hand sketches. Stoddard was also a surveyor and map maker. You can see his natural artistry in the maps he produced. Publishing and selling guidebooks have been a big part of Stoddard's business. Again, the creative covers reflect his artistic spirit. When Stoddard began exploring photography, the wet process was the most common. As you can see here, there were several toxic or hazardous materials involved. This was a very labor-intensive process. To the casual eye, it appeared to be a crazy chemistry experiment. The photographer had to apply wet emulsions onto glass plates, expose those plates, develop them, then fix and wash them all within 10 to 15 minutes. The entire process took place while under a hot, dark cloth, all of which had to be carried into the woods. Whether you are seeing this image for the first time or have experienced it before, take a minute and study this setting. It shows Stoddard in the Adirondacks with his camera, chemistry, and portable darkroom. This image speaks volumes of the determination and complexity of creating such an image in such a remote and potentially hostile environment. The amount of chemistry bottles, the boxes of fragile glass plates, the raggedy dark cloth, and most of all the smile, or smirk, on Stoddard's face as if to say, "Believe it or not, here I am," as if he does not quite believe what he is accomplishing. This image is worthy of pause and reflection. It certainly is the look of a determined man. Might Stoddard have imagined, 120 years ago, that his labors and artistry would have yielded photographs that we, today, would appreciate so much, more than a century later? And did he hope that future generations would revel in the unspoiled beauty of the Adirondacks, captured through his eyes and equipment? These images are the result of one man's determination, combined with his artistic eye, love of photography, and the visual world around him. Now that we have taken a look at Stoddard, we move on to J.S. Wooley. Here we see him again as a young man, standing with his studio camera, his dark cloth draped on the tripod, holding a prepared slide, ready to make an exposure. On the far right, you see him with his wife Susan and daughter Miriam. In the middle, we see an older, senior Wooley, with his wife Susan beside him once again. He has grown his business to the point of needing a staff of photographers located at the Silver Bay YMCA on Lake George, New York. The type below states, "The Wooley Co., Inc., circa 1921." His son Carl is standing behind him, second from the left. Not long after Wooley began shooting and working with Stoddard, dry plate photography was introduced by George Eastman and the Kodak Company. Eastman did not invent the process of pre-coating glass plates, but he mass-produced them, similar to Henry Ford and the mass production of the automobile. These affordable, mass-produced plates would make photography more accessible and somewhat easier to produce an image. Not long after, coated flexible film became available. This changed everything. Records show that Wooley and his wife Susan had a fire in their apartment. No one knows for sure, but the nitrate in films at the time were highly flammable. For safety, he set out to build his own studio, which you see here on Milton Street in Ballston Spa, New York. The new studio had a retail shop on the first floor with a studio and living quarters above. Brownie cameras were soon introduced and were an instant success. However, this simplified access to taking one's own photographs led to the demise of the postcard business that Wooley and others had heavily relied upon for income. Wooley had to adapt, so he also began processing and printing customers' films. He became an early regional Kodak dealer and sold cameras, film, art supplies, and early Victrola record players. Wooley's newly designed studio had skylights for perfectly soft, even lighting, and he began to excel in portraiture. As you can see, he had a flair for fashion and style. Many of the portraits and group shots are still in private collections today. Wooley was a familiar figure around Ballston Spa, Saratoga Springs, and Lake George. He was often seen riding his bike through town with his camera strapped around him. We see him here in his horseless carriage. He seemed to love the latest technology and embraced everything new and current in his world. During the summer months, Wooley was hired as a full-time event photographer at the Silver Bay YMCA on Lake George, New York. He worked for more than a decade photographing all the special events, such as this one of New York Governor Charles Evan Hughes paying a visit to the facility. He also shot the day-to-day events of camp life, including a brisk hike in the Adirondack Mountains shown here. During these months, Wooley traveled around Lake George and beyond to other camps and gatherings. Once he captured a swim marathon in Hague, New York, on Lake George. He went from village to village, photographing everything from new construction to President Taft attending a parade in Plattsburgh, New York. At that time, there were no global camera manufacturers as there are today. Nikon and Canon come to mind. Yet, as this exhibition features, cameras were being designed and produced that created amazingly beautiful images. One was the Alvista. A swing lens camera, the Alvista attempted to mimic the actual angle of human eyesight. It came in varying sizes and used the newly developed flexible film. Both Stoddard and Wooley took advantage of this modern technology and produced stunning results. Here in the exhibition, you will see several of these original negatives digitally scanned into high-resolution files and then printed on a modern ink printer into roughly a 24 by 36 image. By expanding the smaller postcard images into this larger format, we can more easily examine the sharpness, composition, highlights, shadows, and subject matter of these 120-year-old negatives. There are both 4-inch by 5-inch glass negatives and 5-inch by 12-inch Alvista film negatives printed for this display. Both Wooley and Stoddard had another newly developed method available to them, the lantern slide. This early effort at projected image had not yet been perfected, but was being embraced enthusiastically. Wooley also embraced lantern slides and placed advertisements in the local papers after taking trips here in the U.S. as well as abroad. These advertisements touted a night of entertainment in the church basement with singing, advertisements, and an exhibition of his travel slides. The last stop in the exhibition is educational, designed for visitors who are interested in photography today. The interactive touchscreen is designed to help viewers see and understand the process of taking a picture and to share what is involved in creating lasting images.